Imagine a world where you never stress about money. A world where the latest gadgets, the flashiest cars, and the grandest houses don't control your happiness. What if I told you that there is a simple, ancient philosophy that can give you the power to live such a life? A life where you find joy in simplicity, where your worth isn't tied to your wealth, and where you can stand tall and unshaken by the chaos of materialism around you. Sounds too good to be true? Keep watching, because in this video, we're diving deep into the Stoic attitude toward money and material goods, a mindset that has transformed lives for thousands of years and can transform yours too. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why the Stoics valued inner peace over outer riches, but also how you can apply their wisdom to your own life. Trust me, this is one perspective shift you won't want to miss. The story begins in ancient Rome, a bustling empire where wealth and power were the measures of a man's success. Yet, amidst the grandeur of marble palaces and the glitter of gold coins, there lived a group of philosophers who saw the world differently. They were the Stoics, and they believed that true wealth was not found in riches, but in the strength of one's character. One of the most famous Stoics was Seneca, a man who had all the wealth one could dream of. He was an advisor to the emperor, lived in luxury, and had the means to indulge in every pleasure of the time. But despite his riches, Seneca understood a fundamental truth. Money could not buy happiness, peace, or virtue. He wrote about how, despite his wealth, he practiced living simply, reminding himself that contentment comes not from abundance, but from appreciating what you already have. Seneca would often sleep on a hard bed, eat plain food, and wear simple clothes, not because he had to, but because he chose to. He believed that by doing so, he was training himself to be indifferent to wealth and comfort. He taught that if you can find peace and happiness in the bare minimum, then you are truly rich, for you are no longer a slave to your desires. Imagine for a moment, a man who has everything gold, silver, and the finest clothes, yet he is constantly worried about losing it all. He may have much, but he lives in fear. Now, picture a man who has little, but is content with what he has. He doesn't fear loss because he has trained himself to find joy in what he possesses, no matter how small. Who do you think is wealthier? The Stoics believed that the true measure of wealth was not how much money you had, but how little you needed. They argued that when you desire less, you are less likely to be disappointed, less likely to be thrown off course by life's inevitable ups and downs. This is where the Stoic concept of apatheia comes in, a state of being where you are not disturbed by external circumstances, where you remain calm and composed, no matter what life throws at you. Epictetus, another great Stoic philosopher, was born a slave. He had no money, no property, and no status. But he had something far more valuable: a strong, resilient mind. Epictetus taught that while we can't control the world around us, we can control how we respond to it. He believed that true freedom came not from wealth or material goods, but from mastering one's own mind. Epictetus often used the analogy of a ship at sea. Imagine you are on a boat, and a storm hits. You can't stop the wind or the waves, but you can control how you steer the ship. In the same way, we can't control the economy, the stock market, or the price of goods, but we can control how we think about money and how much importance we place on it. He taught that we should view material goods as things that are borrowed from nature. They are not truly ours to keep, and just as easily as they come into our lives, they can be taken away. By adopting this mindset, we can enjoy what we have without becoming overly attached to it. This detachment frees us from the anxiety of losing what we have, or the constant desire for more. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, is another shining example of Stoic wisdom. As the emperor of Rome, he had immense power and wealth. Yet, in his personal writings, known as Meditations, he often reflected on the fleeting nature of material goods. He reminded himself that all the riches in the world were insignificant compared to the health of his soul. He wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color 11 of your thoughts." Marcus Aurelius knew that the pursuit of wealth for its own sake would never lead to lasting fulfillment. Instead, he focused on cultivating virtues like wisdom, courage, and justice, qualities that no amount of money could buy, and that no one could take away from him. Imagine being the ruler of the most powerful empire in the world, surrounded by luxury, with the ability to command anything your heart desires. Yet, despite all this, Marcus Aurelius chose to live a life of modesty and self-discipline. He didn't let his immense wealth define him, because he understood that true power lies not in riches, but in the mastery of one's own mind and soul. The Stoics believe that wealth is not inherently good or bad. It's neutral. What matters is how you use it and how much importance you place on it. They taught that money should be a tool, something that serves you, not something you serve. When you place too much value on material goods, you risk becoming their servant, constantly chasing more and more, never feeling satisfied. Let's consider a modern example. Think about a person who works tirelessly, long hours every day, all for the sake of accumulating wealth. They buy a big house, a fancy car, and all the latest gadgets. But in the process, they sacrifice time with their family, their health, and their peace of mind. They might have everything they ever wanted, materially, but are they truly happy? Are they truly free? Now, think of someone who lives a simpler life. They earn enough to meet their needs, but they don't chase after excess. Instead, they invest their time in relationships, in personal growth, and in experiences that bring them joy. They might not have the latest car or the biggest house, but they're content. They're not constantly worried about losing what they have or comparing themselves to others. Who do you think is living a richer life? The Stoics would argue that the second person is wealthier. Because they have mastered the art of contentment, they have learned that true wealth is not about how much you have, but about how little you need to be happy. This doesn't mean that money or material goods are bad, but that we should be careful not to let them control our lives. Another key aspect of the Stoic approach to money is the idea of voluntary discomfort. The Stoics believed that by occasionally exposing themselves to discomfort, they could build resilience and better appreciate what they had. For example, they might fast for a day, sleep on the floor, or wear simple clothing. These practices were meant to remind them that they didn't need luxuries to be happy, and that they could endure hardships if they had to. This practice of voluntary discomfort is something we can apply in our own lives. By occasionally stepping out of our comfort zones, we can train ourselves to be less dependent on material comforts. This doesn't mean you have to live a life of deprivation, but rather that you should be mindful of your relationship with material goods. Do you need them to be happy, or can you find joy in simpler things? When you practice voluntary discomfort, you also develop gratitude for what you do have. If you've ever gone without something for a while, you know how much more you appreciate it when you have it again. By temporarily giving up small luxuries, you can renew your appreciation for them, and remind yourself that your happiness doesn't depend on them. The Stoics also emphasize the importance of focusing on what is within our control. They believe that we should only concern ourselves with things that we can influence, and accept with grace the things that we cannot. When it comes to money and material goods, there are many factors outside of our control. The state of the economy, market fluctuations, even what others think of us. By focusing on what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, our attitudes, we can maintain our peace of mind, regardless of external circumstances. This mindset is incredibly freeing. When you let go of the need to control things that are beyond your power, you can focus your energy on what truly matters, living a virtuous life, cultivating meaningful relationships, and finding joy in the present moment. You stop worrying about the future, because you know that no matter what happens, you have the inner resources to deal with it. The Stoics also warned against the dangers of comparison. In today's world, it's all too easy to compare ourselves to others, especially with the constant stream of images on social media showing people with seemingly perfect lives, filled with wealth and luxury. But the Stoics taught that comparison is a trap. When you compare yourself to others, you lose sight of your own values and start to measure your worth by someone else's standards. Instead, the Stoics encouraged us to compare ourselves only to who we were yesterday. The goal is to focus on our own personal growth and progress, not on keeping up with others. When you stop comparing yourself to others, you free yourself from envy and dissatisfaction. You start to appreciate your own journey and the unique path you're on. Let's take a moment to reflect on a simple analogy. Imagine you're in a race, but instead of running toward the finish line, you keep looking to the side, watching what the other runners are doing. You stumble, lose your pace, and eventually, you fall behind. But if you focus on your own race, your own path, you're more likely to reach your goals. This is the Stoic way. Focus on your own life, your own values, and let go of the need to measure up to others. One of the most powerful teachings of Stoicism is the idea that we should live in harmony with nature, which means accepting the natural course of events and understanding that everything happens for a reason. This also applies to wealth and material goods. Sometimes, you might lose money, or you might not get that promotion you were hoping for. The Stoics would say that this is part of the natural order of things, and it's up to you to respond with grace and resilience. They believe that every obstacle is an opportunity for growth. If you lose money, it's a chance to practice detachment and to remember that your true worth doesn't come from your bank balance. If you don't get that promotion, it's an opportunity to practice patience and gratitude for what you do have. The Stoics saw every challenge as a way to strengthen their character, and they believed that this inner strength was far more valuable than any material wealth. Let's bring this into the modern world. Imagine you've been saving up for something special, a new car, a vacation, or even a house. But then, something unexpected happens. Maybe there's an economic downturn, and your savings take a hit. Or maybe an emergency arises, and you have to use that money for something else. The initial reaction might be frustration, disappointment, or even despair. But the Stoic approach would be to see this event as a test of your resilience, instead of dwelling on what you've lost. The Stoic mindset encourages you to focus on what you've gained. Maybe you've developed a greater appreciation for the things you already have. Maybe you've learned to be more resourceful, or to find joy in simpler, less expensive pleasures. Every setback is a chance to grow stronger, to become more self-reliant, and to deepen your understanding of what truly matters in life. Another key Stoic principle is the idea of memento mori, which means remember that you will die. This might sound morbid at first, but it's actually a powerful reminder to live each day to the fullest, and to focus on what really matters. When you keep in mind that life is short, and that you can't take material possessions with you, it becomes easier to let go of the need to accumulate wealth, and to focus instead on living a meaningful life. Think about it when you're on your deathbed. Will you be thinking about how much money you made? Or will you be thinking about the relationships you built, the people you helped, and the experiences you had? The Stoics would argue that the pursuit of material wealth is ultimately empty if it's not accompanied by the pursuit of virtue and wisdom. They believe that a life well lived is one where you've made a positive impact on the world and on the people around you. This doesn't mean that you should ignore financial responsibilities or that money isn't important. The Stoics were practical people, and they understood that money is necessary for living in the world. But they also believed that money should be kept in its proper place as a tool, not as the ultimate goal. When you place your happiness and self-worth in things that are impermanent, like money, you set yourself up for disappointment. But when you place your happiness in things that are lasting, like virtue, wisdom, and love, you create a solid foundation for a fulfilling life. Let's revisit Seneca for a moment. Despite his immense wealth, Seneca wrote that it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. This is a powerful statement, and it cuts to the core of the Stoic attitude toward money and material goods. It's not about how much you have, it's about how much you desire. If your desires are endless, you will always feel lacking, no matter how much you accumulate. But if you can learn to be content with what you have, you will always feel abundant.